I do think we have to, accept. And if they fail, that's a great lesson too. I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't even see it as failure per se, as much as it's an opportunity to learn from. So I feel strongly about that as well.
Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied up on it, and I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Gen Z Money Podcast, where we turn financial peace to your reality. I'm your host, James Bowman, and today's episode, I bring on Alissa Maizes, and boy, oh boy, do we have such a long, in-depth conversation about working with financial advisors again. I've had financial advisors on in the past. I've had Genevieve on episode 40. Joey has been a repeat guest on the podcast, and we just go over so many different things about fee-only advising. We talk about student loans. We talk about college, job placement, all these other things. It is such a great conversation. What I really loved about this is that we can talk about people we don't agree with, like whole life insurance or commission financial advisors and things like that, without demonizing them, right? We know not every person who sells whole life insurance is not a demon. And we know people who sell products are not demons. So it's great that we can discuss the pros and cons and not demonize anybody and just bring all the information to the table. With that being said, I don't want to give away too much of the interview. This is such a great, Alissa goes into, she's very well at articulating herself. So I don't even have anything else to say. Let's just go ahead and get right into the interview. Alissa, welcome to the Gen Z Money Podcast. How are you doing on this fabulous morning?
I am great, James. I am so excited to have this opportunity to speak to you and to connect with your community. I love all the content that you put out. I'm blown away at how amazing you are with all your knowledge and how young you are and determined to not just learn for yourself, but to share with other people. So I'm very grateful. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate the kind words. Here's the thing. I'm not an expert in anything. This podcast is a learning journey for me too. So that's why I love bringing on people who know much more like you in order to educate me, and everybody can go on the journey with me. But before we get into it, this is Alissa Maizes. She is a fee-only fiduciary registered investment advisor, and she goes by Amplify My Wealth on Instagram. So, Alissa, let's go ahead, and I want the audience to get to know you. So let's start way back in the day. How was money talked about and viewed as you grew up?
So it's interesting. First of all, I had at the time a grandmother who I was very close with, and she grew up during the Depression. So she grew up in a tenement, shared a bed with her two sisters, was expected to work while she was growing up, and rather than go to college, she was told that she would work for the family. And so I was definitely influenced by her and her money story and her understandable feelings about money and how it really impacted her every day. And so that was part of my money story. My other money story was my parents. And while they never disclosed, I never really had an idea or really thought about how much money they had, which I think is fine. I don't think people need to know what their parents have. They did definitely speak about money in different contexts, whether I was aware that they were very money savvy about the vacations that we went on. We went to Mexico where other people went to different islands. And I remember one of our trips in Mexico, it was actually super sad. The peso just crashed while we were there. And just those conversations about how everything that we're spending money on was going to cost a lot less because of what happened with the peso. So there were definitely money conversations. So I was very aware. I also at one point had some money, and I knew my parents invested money in different stocks, and I was interested in doing that. And my parents let me do it. And I remember like it was yesterday, grabbing a newspaper and seeing that one of the stocks that I invested in, the company went bankrupt. And at the time I was a teenager, I didn't really know exactly what that meant. I knew it wasn't good. I know a lot more about what that means now, but I knew I lost all my money. And the thing is, I was under the safety of living in a home with my parents. I wasn't going to upend my whole future because of it. So that was definitely interesting. And then as a teenager, I remember that corner candy store, going in there and grabbing different money related magazines. I read Kiplinger, which I still like. And just, I didn't realize I was so interested in money and finance. I just did it, so that's just who I was. And the other thing is if my parents didn't have money for something that I wanted, they never said we didn't have it. I think it was usually just no, or we're not giving it to you, or whatever it was. I found a way to make money, whether it was selling my belongings. When I was a kid, I went through my closet and sold belongings to people who wanted what I had, without asking my parents. Probably not a great idea. Walking dogs when that wasn't very popular. Someone had a new puppy and they said, "Can you walk the dog after school and during lunch?" And I said, yes. So I was willing to do anything legal for money.
I love it. Wow, there's so much to unpack there. I want to go back to the first thing you talked about, which kind of relates to the last thing you talked about, which is your grandmother growing up in the Great Depression. And so it's obvious that she was no what's the word I'm looking for? She knew what working meant from a very young age because she had to support her family. So hearing stories from your grandmother working as a child or as a young adult didn't seem so outlandish, right? It kind of felt natural. It kind of felt like that's what young people do. Is that right?
Yes, I knew that her upbringing wasn't what everyone I knew was doing, but I definitely understood that if you wanted money or needed money for something, you had to figure out a way to do it. And that's what her family did, and that's what she did.
Yeah, I
So
think
definitely.
go ahead. I think that's so phenomenal because like nowadays, I don't mean to sound so crass, but nowadays working as a student or working as even a college student is kind of taboo. Like, wait a minute, you're a student, why are you working? But that's only in modern times that's so taboo. It's so unnatural. It's so weird to do because everybody did it, before at least my generation.
That's interesting that you say that, because I have two sons in college, and they're actually in a college where working is really applauded. Not necessarily, I don't know what the culture is with respect to working while you're in school, but it's known for a co-op program. So you spend semesters doing academics and other semesters you spend doing work. And my younger son, actually during the pandemic being locked down, unbeknownst to me, started a business. Obviously, I know about it now. He initially started it online, and it wasn't a matter of a need, but he saw a need that other people had, and he saw a way to fill it. And so initially, he didn't even tell me he was doing it. And I'm wondering if it's because of what you said, the culture of you're supposed to be a student, that's your job. But when it got to the point where he was no longer reinvesting the money in his business, and he realized he was only 17 and had no way to take the money legally because He tried to set up a PayPal, and you can't set up a PayPal or a bank or anything without an adult, because he wasn't 18. So that's when he decided to have a conversation with me. But I find that interesting for my kids. Maybe it's because I also told them I worked through college. My parents never said I had to, but my parents were very generous and thankfully paid for college. But the amount of money I had for spending wasn't enough. And my friends had jobs, and I got a job, and I worked at least 20 hours a week throughout college and never thought anything of it. So I wonder if my kids normalized it because I did it and talked about it, but they didn't want to tell me because you're right. I probably say to my kids, your job is doing well in school, right?
You know, Alissa, I want to get your opinion on something, because what you just said, it's got the cogs turning in my head. So I want to get your opinion, because it's very obvious that when someone starts a business, it's not applauded and it's not appreciated as much as an event such as a person getting accepted into a college, right? And the reason behind that, I start to think, is maybe because getting accepted into college is a more what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say more successful, but it's a higher likelihood of success than something like starting a business. So what do you think about that? Do you think that might have contributed to why they might have felt ashamed or nervous or whatever in, telling people like, I have a business? Because to be honest, the likelihood of running a successful business is lower than the likelihood of graduating college or something like that.
That's interesting that you say that. I definitely think anyone who's starting a business, when you first tell someone, they're always skeptical. So what are you doing? Like, have you made money yet? But on the other hand, I do feel my son knew that I do believe, and I really do believe this, that when you take on a lot of different things, that there comes, sort of like the tipping point, the book by Malcolm Gladwell, there, just like there's a point where you reach success and you see results, there's also a point where if you take on a lot of different things, that some things might suffer a little. If you take too many hard classes, yes, okay, there are some kids who could get straight A's in all those classes, but there's something else, whether it's their mental health or socially, is there something else that's suffering? So I do believe that my kids have heard that a lot. When I've seen them take on a lot, that I just say, sometimes there's give and take in anyone's life. It's not children. And so I definitely think that he might have been thinking, well, is my mom going to be on me about schoolwork because I'm now spending time on a business? But I do think to some degree, I think it depends on the home, right? If you experienced people starting businesses and then the family having stress around money because the businesses never worked, there's definitely a different viewpoint. In our own little family, I don't think that I saw it that way. I definitely said, you're going to college and you already applied, and I want you to focus on that. That being said, right before he started college, I saw his excitement about his business. And I said, if you feel that you need to take some time off before college to focus on this, I'd rather you do that than not get the most out of college. But I hope he feels I was supportive. I definitely asked a lot of questions because I'm also protective over my child, especially since he was so young. But I think it's like everyone's money story, which I feel that you're always touching upon, whether you're saying it directly or not, whenever you share information. And I think in our home, we did speak a lot about entrepreneurship. I think Shark Tank is a great, great show that everyone should watch. And it's such a great family show to watch, to learn about different businesses and how to start them. It gets your creative juices going. So I hope that he feels I was supportive, but I'm sure when you're questioning your child or any person about their new business, there is a part of them that feels you're not supportive, for sure.
Alissa, that is so phenomenal. As you're saying this, I remembered a book, and it's a very, very good book. I'm going to link it down in the show notes. The author is Christy Wright, and the title is Take Back Your Time, The Guilt-Free Guide to Life Balance. And essentially what she said in the book is, it's all about doing what's right now. And so if you're trying to spin 10, 20, 30 plates at a time, the likelihood of you dropping everything and failing is much higher than if you just pick one, two, or three. And so this goes back to your son in college. It's like you're in college and you have a business. Well, now you're trying to spin two plates at one time, which is fine. A lot of people can do it. And obviously he was pretty successful at doing it, right? And but it's all about prioritizing, okay, what deserves my attention right now? Is it college? Is it the business? Can I split them? And so I really think that that's a really, really important topic that you brought up, is essentially you have to prioritize your life. And sometimes you're going to prioritize the wrong things. And it's just a human error that we do. But the fact that you prioritize is better than failing at every single thing you try to do. So I think that's phenomenal that, like, your son, he didn't just drop college and say, I'm going all in on a business. And he also didn't just drop the business and say, you know what? Nope, I'm going all in on college. Forget it. He found a balance, and it ended up working to the point where now he had to bring mom in and say, hey, look, I need a little bit of help, right? To make this successful, I need a little bit of help. So that's phenomenal.
Well, just full disclosure, I don't really help him. We were just once he turned 18, he set up his own account and I introduced him to the accountant. And, I think it's his own journey. I haven't really helped him. It was just funny when it was making money and he's like, how do I get the money? Because of his age. So other than that, it is a balance. And the thing is, for people who are thinking, maybe they're thinking, why am I supportive? My kid's going to college. Not everyone is so lucky to be able to go to college. And I also feel that it's his journey and I am not with him in college. You can't make your kids do something really at any age, but especially once they're teenagers, it's all bets are off. Even if they say they're doing it, I think it's more important to have an open conversation. You can definitely share how you feel, but also understand that you don't know what they're doing when they're not with you. When people are like, oh, my kid needs to get home by a certain time, like, bad things happen at all hours of the day. They're not restricted to after midnight. And I feel that having a close relationship is much more important than trying to control something. I definitely give input, I'm sure, when he doesn't want it. I can't control myself completely, but I do think we have to, accept. And if they fail, that's a great lesson too. I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't even see it as failure per se, as much as it's an opportunity to learn from. So I feel strongly about that as well.
So what it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm just trying to, process what you're saying in my head. It sounds like you realize, and I think everybody should realize, that you do not have authority over your children at a certain age. Legally, yes, but essentially they're going to do what they want to do behind your back, and they're going to get in trouble and all these things. But you focus less on having authority and more on having influence. And if you can influence them, then you at least still have your foot in the door to help them make decisions that you think are going to be best.
I hope so. I wonder what he'll think when he listens to this, but
Gotcha. Okay, Alissa, so let's go into your advising, your advising business, because I think it's super duper important. Shout out to Joey. He's a financial advisor I have all the time. Genevieve was on episode 40. She was a financial advisor at one point. And so now we come along to Alissa. I want to walk through because you're a little bit different than the other advisors I've had on. You are a fee-only advisor. So can you break down what is a fee-only advisor and how is that different from a asset under management advisor, commission advisor, or whatever the correct word for that is?
So great question. For me, it was really important to work under a model that I would want if I was looking for a financial advisor. And I felt that the advice was really important, to give people advice, because not everyone has someone that they could get advice from that isn't family, that they actually seek out the advice instead of someone giving unsolicited advice. So but on the other hand, I know with assets under management, which basically means that you have actual assets, usually securities, that the advisor is managing and charging a percentage. So whether they're making money or not making money for you, no matter what they're providing, they are charging you money. And so I really felt strongly, because those platforms, usually as those advisors become more successful, they then have minimums that you have to have in order to work with them. And I feel that there are sometimes people who need financial advice that don't have that minimum. And I wanted to be able to have a platform where I could really separate those two and offer my advice and let people know, regardless of their net worth, that I would help them with their finances so they can increase their net worth if that's their goal, or whatever their goal might be. And also, it avails me of the ability to recommend, when I'm giving investment advice, to recommend I focus on diversified portfolios of ETFs and mutual funds, but I want them to go where I would go, which would be for low expense, low costs. And if I were doing assets under management, I might not be able to give that advice, because I'd be telling them go somewhere else, possibly. Not that there wouldn't be opportunities for me to do it with those places, but I felt this way I could really give advice and separate the potential conflict of interest that would be there.
Alissa, that's a really great point, and this is something that I still wrestle with in my head, the difference or the benefits of going with a fee-only advisor versus a basically someone paid on commission. And I have like the devil on each shoulder, with the benefits of this one and benefits of this one. And this is the main argument that I've constructed for myself that I have no answer to. So maybe you can shed some light on this. And this is just playing devil's advocate between fee only versus commission based. I know they're both great, and that I think that majority of advisors are going to give you the best advice they know how, and they're not going to chase the commission. That's me being positive. That's all I can do, right? So here's the argument, and maybe you can speak to it. So both advisors make money regardless of how the investments do. They get the commission whether your portfolio is up or down, they get a commission. Or fee only, you pay them the fee whether your portfolio is up or down. And you guys can't, for the most part, control the outcome of every single investment. So the argument can be made that with a commission base, the more your portfolio goes up, the more they make. While with a fee only, the more your portfolio goes up, they make the same amount of money, because the fee doesn't necessarily change with that. So wouldn't it logically make sense that the commission-based advisor would want your portfolio to grow because their pay depends on it more? Or is that flawed thinking? Or can you break that down? Am I missing something?
Well, I think part of it is there's no crystal ball. So if anyone tells you that they can make more money for you with their advice than someone else, I think it's really a misguided statement, because realistically, there's so many factors to look at, and investing is just really a small part of it. It's having a foundation, seeing what someone wants in their life. What's going to make you happy, James? And how can we accomplish that? And you seeing that and then making decisions that support that. Realistically, I could say, okay, well, if you go for riskier, maybe you'll have a better chance, because there's a greater chance it'll go up, but there's also a greater chance or a greater percentage it could go down. I think it has more to do, if someone's doing what they should be doing, it's really what risk are you comfortable with? Showing someone this model portfolio based on history, which is no guarantee of the future, but based on this, it could go down, let's for argument's sake, say 20%. And you look at me and you look at your balance and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't sleep if that happens. Well, now if I tell you that we should do something less risky, it's not likely to go up as quickly either. So does that mean I'm not giving good advice? I don't think so. I think the important thing is to really put your interests first as a fiduciary. That's my objective. And the other thing, about assets under management, because I have spoken to people that have worked or work with people who are guiding them with assets under management. And with some of them, and I'm not saying this is the case in every situation, if they don't have as much money, this is how they feel, some of them, if they don't have as much money as they think other clients do, these clients sometimes feel that they're not getting the attention when the business of the advisor gets really big. The other thing is, depending on the advisor, are they going to be as likely to say, something, you have required minimum distributions that are coming out. One thing you could say to someone is invest it. Again, you don't need the money and you could keep it with me and we could continue growing it for your legacy. But the other part is, and I know someone close to me who had this, they were, so with retirement accounts, for anyone who might not know, as certain age and point, you have what's called the required minimum distribution, where the government says it's time for you to give us some taxes and take this money out. And there's a minimum that you have to take out. Well, in this person's situation, they did not have lots and lots of money, and they were getting that required minimum distribution out. And the person, they felt maybe they weren't being paid attention to because they didn't have lots of money with this advisor. Obviously, they're not 100% sure. But this person, had they not taken the required minimum distribution and instead designated it to the charities that they were giving money to anyway, like had they been given that advice, which seems like it's not a big deal, but you actually, when you take those required minimum distributions from a 401k, for instance, or IRA, you have to pay tax on the money, income tax. But if you designate it for a charitable organization, you don't pay the tax. And so this person was taking the RMDs and then they were donating money to the charities. And when I brought this to their attention, I said, did they ever discuss this with you? This is something you could do. And they said, are you sure? It sounds so crazy. This is before I was even I helped family and friends with finances for years before I got into this professionally. And I said, just call the person up and ask. And they did, but the person didn't tell them. So I feel that sometimes people might not take the time. I'm not saying there's a reason. I assume the person knew because they weren't surprised when the person called them. But I think, people focus on different things. Ideally, no matter who you go to, they should be giving you that advice, in my opinion.
Gotcha. But they missed it because their attention might have been on higher asset clients, essentially.
That's how the client felt. The client is no longer with them. But that's how they felt. And they were, especially since they have a tight financial situation, I think it really bothered them because it made a big difference in their finances once they made that change. Or, for instance, donating money just outright to charity. I do a lot of volunteer work for charitable organizations. And one of the great things with someone who doesn't need their RMDs is to just outright take those RMDs. And there was one donor at an organization that I volunteered for that would literally take $100,000 that they didn't need out of their RMD and just donate it to the same organization every single year. And they had to take the money. They didn't need the money, and they were able to give charitably, so it's things like that. That being said, I'm sure there are a lot of people who have assets under management that do give that advice, but it's that, you're also giving up your money that you're keeping and that you're getting a percentage on when you tell them to put it elsewhere.
Gotcha. So essentially, in the example that you were giving, I want to try and break it down to layman's terms for those who aren't quite understanding the logistics of what you're saying. So essentially, if the money goes from the investment account, let's just say it's a 401k, directly to the charity, then it is not taxed. But if the money goes from the investment account to your personal bank account, you withdraw it, and then it goes to charity, you're required to pay taxes on it, which can be, depending on where you live, up to 50% of the income. Is that right?
Yeah, whatever your income tax rate is at that time, which normally for most people it is lower when they have to take the RMDs, but you still can get a charitable deduction if you take it out, but it's the tax savings isn't as great doing it that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, I understand it. I think the bulk of the information people need to take away from this is it needs to go from the account to the charity to get the most tax. Let's just call it tax.
The benefit.
There it is.
Right.
Boom.
And
then,
that's it. I'm sorry. And just to address that, because people might be curious, and I'm not, just to put out there, I am not giving financial advice. I'm sharing information. So everyone really needs to do their own due diligence, speak to their accountant or advisor. But the other thing is that's the same thing with any accumulated, like if you have assets such as ETFs or mutual funds or individual stocks, and you see that you're going to make a lot of money and you're someone who gives to charity anyway, people can give those appreciated assets and get a tax write-off and not pay tax on those gains. So, those are things, but a lot of people, people don't know that. It's okay if they don't want to do that. It might not be, they might prefer not to do that, but it's just something to think about. But the rate of taxation of those things, if it's been held for a year plus a day or more, is a lot less than if it's a short-term investment where, once again, you're taxed on your income tax rate.
Gotcha. So this is essentially identical to like a 401k rollover. If you roll over a 401k to another 401k or another qualifying account, there is no tax burden. But if you withdraw the money and you do not put it into the qualified account in a certain amount of time, now you pay taxes on it and all that bad stuff. And taxes are expensive, guys. Stay away from taxes. They're not good. And I just want to I want to go back for a second and point out something you said and kind of add on to it, which is because, I played devil's advocate for the commission-based financial advisor. So now I want to play devil's advocate for the fee only, which is something you said very awesomely. A fee only advisor, because their fee is set, they're okay. They're perfectly fine with you taking less risky moves in order to help you sleep at night. For example, with a commission only advisor, if you have the option to invest $100,000 with them or take that $100,000 and pay off debt, like a credit card debt, well, the credit card debt getting paid off is not going to earn anything for the fee. I'm sorry. It's not going to earn anything for the commission-based financial advisor. So they are less likely to give you that advice. But I want to preface this by, I don't think commission-based financial advisors would give advice like invest over credit card debt, but I'm just giving this as an example. Or even if a person wants to pay off their home, the fee only advisor is much more likely to give that advice if it is the best thing in your client's mind and you weigh out the pros and cons and let them make the decision. Is that a good argument for you fee only advisors?
Right. I mean, I definitely, like I said, I think there are good people in every single industry. And I think it's important, if you are working with someone, to ask them exactly these questions. How are you making your money? Are you making fees? Are you charging assets under management? And how much are you charging? Because guess what? You're the client. And I think so many times people are intimidated and they don't feel comfortable asking. And I think it's really important to not work with that person that you feel uncomfortable asking those questions of, because at the end of the day, it's your money. And so for me, I think asking those questions, and if there's a red flag in anything that someone says, either ask them a question about it or go somewhere else. That's my own feeling. I think, when people are earning, so there's definitely, fees that people earn, whether they're selling products, right? If they're selling certain securities, maybe they're making a fee on that, or they're selling insurance or annuities, like there are those things. And then separately, there's assets under management, where it's a percentage of all the assets that you have with that person. And sometimes it could be both, where the person is selling those products and they get assets under management. So like they're selling you insurance. It doesn't mean you don't need insurance, but it's also important for people to realize that different, and I feel really passionate about this because I've heard it all over the place. There are some people that sell insurance, and I'm not saying they're a certain type of person, but there are people who sell insurance that prey on people that aren't as financially literate and maybe aren't as strong with their finances at that point of their life. And they tell them that wealthy people do not invest in anything that starts with a 4. And I remember hearing this and thinking, a 4, what does that mean? Because I like, a 401k, a 403b. I mean, well, a lot of people become millionaires because they invest in things that start with a 4. And so I listened further because I was kind of confused, even being in the financial industry. I'd never heard someone say this. And they said, what you should be doing is buying life insurance, not term, but life insurance that has an investment vehicle within the product, which, by the way, so everyone knows, when those products or annuities, I'm not saying they're never a great choice, but they also generate a lot more commission for the person who sells it, and they make it upfront, in the beginning of the policy life. And your policy isn't necessarily worth what you want or need it to be worth. So for instance, eventually it might be that way, but if I'm getting life insurance to protect my family in case I pass away, I want to make sure the day I pay the first premium that my family is going to be protected. And that's not the case with this type of policy. So I find it, it was really disturbing. And they were talking about all different ways that you can use this life insurance and invest in it and take money for different things. Life insurance is to protect. It is not supposed to be, it doesn't mean there aren't investment opportunities in certain types, but it's more important that it's used to protect someone and their family and their loved ones, in my opinion. And so just so people know, if you have heard that, your retirement plans through your employer are a great way to become a millionaire. And I know James speaks about this all the time. Just the other day, you talked about how much you could contribute each month to become a millionaire. So I just had to, while you were talking about the different commission things, I think it's important that people know that, because there are people taking advantage of people like that. And so sorry, I had to share that.
No, I love it. And I want to go down this a little bit further with my next question, but I want to point out some things. What you just said, what I really like about this conversation, what I really like about having conversations with people, especially on this podcast, is that I don't buy whole life insurance. I'm sure you don't buy whole life insurance. I'm not going to sit here and say every single agent who sells whole life insurance is the devil. They need to be, in jail. I'm not going to go as far to say these people are just evil. They're downright. I'm not going to do that. I am going to point out the facts. And what you said agents make more money when they sell a whole life insurance policy than a term life insurance. That is just fact. Okay. It's not hating on them. It's not belittling them. It's not telling a lie. It is just a true statement. So they have an incentive to sell it to you more. So, but I love that we can point these things out, and you're not on here bashing commission-based financial advisors saying, oh, they're the devils and no, because they might have benefits to some people while fee only has its own benefits. The same way term life has benefits, way more benefits to me, but there is, I don't know where, I have not discovered them, but there has to be reasons or a reason why a whole life insurance policy can benefit a person compared to term life. And I'm pretty sure it's up there with the billionaires, right? It's a way to pass on wealth without taxation. So I know it has a benefit for somebody, but I also know it does not have a benefit for most people compared to term life. And I can say that without demonizing or being polarizing or saying torch the house down, because I just don't like the product they're selling.
Oh, definitely. I think that when you work with an estate planning attorney, and I am a licensed attorney, I don't practice law, so I'm making that very clear. And like I said, I'm not giving financial or legal advice for that matter, but I do like working and bringing people together with professionals in the areas that they need help in. So I do think there is a time and a place. I would not on my own say to someone, buy something other than term without first bringing in an estate planning attorney, because you really have to discuss all of your finances and have a whole estate plan. And in those conversations, discuss, is this someone who would benefit from something other than term? Because the downside of, ideally, you have your term insurance, James, which it sounds like you do. And ideally, you are also accumulating wealth at the same time. And so when that term ends, hopefully it ends at a point where the people who are relying on the money that motivate you to get the term. So say that you have someone in your family that you wanted you want them to benefit from that, and you knew in 20 years they won't need that benefit because either they will be fine on their own, or alternatively, you would have saved enough money that if something happens to you, they would get that money and that would help them. But it's supposed to be part of an all-encompassing plan. So the other side of it is when the 20 years is up, guess what? Like, you don't have that life insurance. At that point, it's probably going to be a lot more expensive to get insurance because you're older. You might have had a health issue, or hopefully not, but usually just the age unto itself ends up making that policy much more cost prohibitive, which is one of the reasons why I think it's really important. It's great if your employer is paying for some life insurance or offering you some extra life insurance, definitely do that. I think it's really important for people to consider getting it on their own, the term life insurance, and really think about how long they need the coverage for, because I have met with people that realize they didn't save enough money to basically self-insure, and their term life is about to expire, yet they still need that protection for their family. So now when they went and, looked into different options, all of a sudden the insurance is a lot more money. I mean, I think it was more than 10 times what they were paying for the same coverage that's about to expire. So I just think that's, something to think about also. And like I said, I like it ideally to be separate from the employer, because you never know when you're going to come and go from your employer. And then it doesn't come with you. When you leave your employer, if you have no life insurance, you have no life insurance. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, I think while we're on that subject, I also want to go down the rabbit hole of what you just said is absolutely right. Like, I think you should have, if your employer offers some life insurance and it's within your budget and you think it'd be beneficial for you, I think it's right to take it. But you should also have your own policy. If your employer offers a 401k or a retirement plan and it is within reason, within your budget, I think you should take it. I also think you should have your own Roth IRA, traditional IRA, or some other retirement outside of that or Social Security. And yeah, I just think you should always have multiple sources of whether it's insurance, multiple banks. I'm a big proponent of that, multiple investment institutions, multiple accounts that have different purposes. I'm not a big supporter of an all-in-one plan. So, for example, whole life, I don't want the same person giving me insurance advice. I don't want that person to also be giving me investment advice. I don't want them to be giving me estate planning advice. I don't want them to be filing my taxes. I don't want one person doing it all. And that's just me personally. Now, there may be some people out there that can do all of it perfectly. They're experts in every field. That's fine. It's not for me. I am a big proponent of separate, maybe even have two advisors to where if one is fishy, you can check them against another. They can do audits on each other. I mean, all being reasonable, like don't just waste people's times. But yeah, I'm a big proponent in putting all your eggs in different baskets and not being too diversified to where you're being counterproductive, but being diversified enough to where if you lose your life insurance policy, you're not also losing your retirement savings. You're not also losing whatever else is in that policy. So.
Right. And actually, it's interesting that you said about the different baskets, because I think that's interesting. But the other thing, I first want to address that. So I had a health scare a number of years ago. My youngest, who's now 19, was not even a year old. And then my other son's 2 years older than that. And so I will say it definitely woke me up. At the time, I was not in the financial industry other than helping family and friends. And I actually condensed things. As far as I agree with you, I like to have different people give me advice. This way, there's no conflict, there's no incentive. I want, that I do like that. I have an accountant, I have an estate planning attorney. And I do like those things separate. But as far as what you were saying, like separate banks, definitely if you want a high yield savings account, you probably have to go to a separate bank, most likely, just to get the most. But I also do like the idea of making sure that if something were to happen, first of all, everyone who's 18 or older ideally has some minimal, at least, estate planning documents. So even when my kids went to college, it's important to have your healthcare proxy and power of attorney and a few other HIPAA, a few other things, because God forbid something happens to them. It's no longer so easy to take care of your kids if something happens to them. And I think a lot of people overlook that. They think of, oh gosh, they're 18, finally they're on their own. But that's really important if you're 18 or older, that you have those documents. And so part of it is it's great to have the documents, but if the people who are taking over don't know where things are, or they're kind of too complicated and all over the place, that could be an issue too. And so when I had the health scare, I realized that if something happened to me, that my husband, not only would he have to deal with 2 kids and losing his wife suddenly, unexpectedly, that he would also have to find things. And so I think that's important too, whether, you use a company like LastPass or something where you could store information or passwords. So I actually condensed things. I had more of a situation like yours. I had all different banks and investment accounts and things all over the place, and realized that would be a lot, even if I left the information for my husband. So I definitely don't have as many things all over the place, but if there's a benefit, I will definitely open up another account for something, but I do try and minimize the quantity of things.
Yeah, absolutely, Alissa. And I just want to bring up an example because, there's a fine line between having Diversification with your investments, insurance, whatever that is, but also being too diversified. It's a story that came up, which is funny to me. I understand why, but there's an NBA player, a very, very tall and very good NBA player by the name was Giannis Antetokounmpo. And it came out that he's foreign, and so he has a financial advisor, and I'm sure he has professionals in his corner, but it came out that he had 50 different banks, which each held $250,000. And for those who do not know, I'm pretty sure FDIC insures up to $250,000. So his philosophy was, well, I'm not going to put more money in this bank than they will insure. So I'm just going to have 50 different banks. And so that's an extreme case of, okay, I understand the concept, but that's a bit overwhelming for me personally. And so I just want to share that story that there is a line between diversifying, maybe having 2 or 3 different banks that serve different purposes, or having, 2 different brokerage accounts that serve different purposes, and then going to an extreme. Now, there's nothing wrong with what he did, but it's a lot to keep track of and a lot to handle, especially if he just passed away. Now you have 50 different institutions you have to deal with to try and recover all of his assets, which is basically what Alissa was saying.
Right. I mean, the only thing I will say that I love about what he did is that a lot of people, especially professional athletes, who suddenly at a young age make an insane amount of money, don't usually think so far in advance. And so what I do like about what he did in his story is that he didn't spend all of his money, which a lot of them do. And then one day they can't play sports. I mean, even if they get a severe injury, they might not be able to make that amount of money ever again. Not everyone's LeBron James, right? Or, other people who have all different ways of making money because of endorsements. Even if they got injured, they'd still be making a lot of money. Most people don't. And so I do, I agree it was all over the place, but thankfully he didn't spend it. That's the other side of it. So if anyone has that amount of money and they're not spending all the money and that makes them happy, definitely there is a positive, side of his story, because usually those stories they don't have the money. But yes, I agree, that would be a big nightmare. And hopefully he has some great estate planning too, because a lot of young people with lots of money overlook good estate planning. I mean, there are a lot of famous people, where it's probated for years and years and years. So it sounds like he's pretty savvy, but yes, too many accounts.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with what he did, but it's kind of like it's kind of like that overinsurance question. Like, I never tell somebody being overinsured is a net bad thing, but I think it's overwhelming, and I think it might be unnecessary, but it's never wrong. I guess that's where I kind of
as long as you can afford the insurance, because that's the other part too, because a lot of people, I think it's important to understand what your needs really are and to simultaneously put aside money like you do, which will essentially be self-insurance. And if you save more than you need in the end, or it grows enough, then maybe you won't need other things like long-term care that a lot of people end up getting at a certain age, because you might have enough wealth accumulated, you're not spending a lot. So I always like to think of it in the sense of, this is great now, I need it, how long will I need it for? But what is the plan so I could self-insure, so when that term life is no longer there for me, I still have those needs met.
I love it. Alyssa, so let me ask you this. So we talked about, normal buying securities, buying stocks, bonds, and things like that. We've also talked about insurance needs. What are some other topics, other realms that you as a fee-only advisor would feel comfortable discussing with clients? For example, if they should be buying a home or renting, or things outside of just stock market things. Are there other things that you assist clients with, or do you kind of niche down to your lane and stay very specific to that because that's what you're best at?
So I definitely discuss different things, because I do have, different, like I said, I don't give legal advice to my clients either. I do give them financial advice. But since I am a licensed attorney, but I don't practice, I don't give legal advice. But on the other hand, I do have the ability to see legal issues that I might otherwise not see with that background. I will not give them the legal advice, but I might put them in the direction and connect them with someone who could give them legal advice. So there are times that I see things, whether it's business related. And when someone starts a business, I always think about what if it, where it might go? What if it gets bigger? How can they protect themselves? And sometimes you don't have the money right away to do all the things you have to do. So I think it's important to figure out how much money can you put towards your business. I think a lot of people that start businesses overlook that step and they just spend money. They have the money, they spend the money, they put it on a charge card, they hear about people using debt to build wealth, and they don't think about the whole picture. And so I think, if someone's starting a business, certain people that I would normally connect them with would be an accountant, possibly a lawyer, depending on what the accountant thinks that they should do, as well as if they need a trademark attorney. I think it's great to have a new website, but sometimes we can't afford that right away. So there are all different things. I do have the insight to give, to share that information with people, even though it's not under the financial advice, but to really think about all those expenses, because a lot of times people, especially on social media, you hear about there's this opportunity, you could be better with your business and that. Well, maybe those are great things and they're on your dream list, but what can you afford now? How much did you set aside? Thinking about in those terms, I definitely, I go with what someone needs and wants. So if, for instance, someone, it's very common to discuss retirement or whatever that might look like. For some people, it's work optional. They want to do it early. They want to do it, 65, 70. We talk about, what do you see that life looking like? What are the things you want to do? And that goes for short and long-term goals. What would make you happy? I would ask you, James, what are the things that make you happy? Because when you see the things that make you happy, and then you see the way you spend your money, sometimes you might look at it differently and say, something? That makes me really happy. Why am I spending money on this when this other thing is really my dream? And just having those conversations and understanding that is huge. I also help people break down their expenses because sometimes it's overwhelming. So it really depends on what their needs are. Definitely, thinking about, like you said, whether it's term life insurance, whether it's an estate planning attorney, having those protections. As I said before, I think it's important to also protect your passwords, because first of all, who can remember them all? But it makes your life easier. I did it myself not too long ago, and it's a game changer, because you just need one password and then you get all the information. If something were to happen to me, all that person who's supposed to help me with my finances or my life needs is one password, right? And now they can get access to what they need. So for me, it's a matter of also just simplifying and creating the life that you want for yourself. So the investing is definitely part of it, because that's why I made sure I was licensed to give investment advice. But when I think about my finances, there's so much more to it. Who is important in my life that I'd like to help if I'm no longer here? Who I want to help now. And if I reach this goal, what's my next goal? Is there ever too much? That's a question a lot of people ask. I'm curious what you think, James. Is there ever a time where can you ever accumulate too much money? What do you think?
So the short answer is going to be no. I don't think you can ever accumulate enough money, but I will put an asterisk on it and say, I think accumulating, you should always have a plan and a reason why you're accumulating money. I think accumulating money in and of itself is not a plan. And so if I want to accumulate $1 billion because I want to make $1 billion business that, is debt free, then that is a reason to try to accumulate. So I don't think you can ever accumulate enough money, but I think once you start accumulating money and not having a plan for it, I think that's where you kind of lose me. Because I mean, and see, I don't hate on people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk because I know their accumulation is due to their business, and they're not just taking money and sitting on it and never using it. They're selling stock, they're investing in businesses and things like that. So even though I do not know their plan for their money, I'm sure they do have a plan for their money. Even like Bill Gates, who said 97% of it's going to go to charity. At least he has a reason. So that's what I personally think. But I know a lot of people would disagree and say, like, once you've hit a certain milestone, you don't need money anymore. And that's somewhat a true statement, I would think.
That's interesting. Yeah, I definitely I agree. It's important to have a plan. I applaud which I don't think Jeff Bezos, I'm not sure about Elon Musk, but I do definitely appreciate the very wealthy people who have committed to the Giving Pledge, where you agree either during your lifetime or when you pass away, or combination thereof, to give at least half of your money to charity. I think it's, to different non-for-profits, which I know Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, a lot of amazing people and also not so well-known people have made the Giving Pledge. Jeff Bezos's ex-wife did that. So we definitely need more people to do that. So I appreciate that you mentioned that. I think it's such an amazing thing that there are people who do that, because I know a lot of people, like you said, they hate on people who have all this money. But if they're part of the Giving Pledge, and you could Google it, a name for someone, and see who did that pledge, I think I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to go back for just 1 second to hit on some the last topic we were talking about, which is speaking on things that, see, when people come to me for financial coaching advice, I go outside of that just a bit. I'm qualified to tell people, listen, I think you need a will. I think you need an estate planner. I think you need to go to an insurance agent and get insurance. I think you need to go to your student loan office to figure out some grant programs or whatever. I am qualified to tell people that they need things. I am not qualified to do any of these things. And so I think that goes back to finding a financial advisor or finding advice altogether, is that they are qualified to tell you, I think you need to make a will. If you do not have a will, I think you need to see an estate planner. They are not qualified to absolutely do those things. Like, I'm going to do an estate plan. I'm also going to do your taxes. I'm also going to do your insurance. So I think it's great to recognize, like, I can look at somebody and say, hey, look, your leg is broken. I'm not qualified to fix it, but I know that I think your leg is broken. I think you might need to seek a specific help in that field.
Definitely. I think it's important to know, as a professional in anything you do, like, it could be fixing jewelry. If you think that's not your expertise to fix that type of jewelry, please don't do it, right? Like, whatever it is, I think everyone needs to understand and know, if you're giving a referral to someone, to be transparent. I do not get fees, referral fees or anything. And actually, there was someone who provided me with service, and when they we had our last meeting, they said, oh, if you refer anyone, I will give you a certain amount of money for anyone who signs up with me. And it wasn't in the money space. It was the person who designed my website. And I said to her, that's so generous of you, but I don't take fees for anything. And I don't feel comfortable with that. If I were to, suggest to, a client here is a web designer that you might like, or maybe they go to them because they saw my website. I say, can you pass that fee on to my client instead? Because I'm not taking it. And so I will not take anything for referring my clients. And I've made it very clear. And I actually, instead, I've asked if they would pass it on to my client, if my client would to choose to do that. And they said, absolutely. They thought that was great. And so I think having, because if I'm referring someone and I'm making money, then there's kind of a conflict. It doesn't mean that that person's not the best person to do it, but I think that, to me, that's important. And I do focus on putting together a team. Yes, if you have debt that you need to pay off, and I see that it's something that we can tackle, but if I think, and this is where my legal, insights, I guess, come into play. Sometimes I look at, I'm like, that is so much debt. Maybe there's something that someone who is an attorney who specializes in debt, that's all they do day and night. Maybe that's someone that we should speak to before you start doing these things, because sometimes when you redo your debt or, some of those moves, sometimes you can't undo those things. You have to think of anything that's legal. You're signing a lease, whether it's for a car or a home, a mortgage on a home. These are legal agreements. So sometimes you're much better off pausing and finding an expert who can see if this is the best move. Now, if they've already signed their loans, then a debt specialist who's an attorney who can deal with the legal part and really look at it and understand, is there anything we could do about it? To me, that's where I would go. If it's just, we have this amount of money, it doesn't seem overwhelming. It seems like everything's on the up and up. That is definitely something you put in your expense plan as a regular payment, just to distinguish the two. So I agree with you. It's really important it doesn't mean you don't have the insight, and you might even be able to figure it out yourself. I could look at a contract, I could look at a debt instrument, but the reality is I want someone that specializes in that. That's all they do. That's what I want for myself, and that's what I'd want for someone else as well.
Yeah, I love the idea of like, listen, because when you accept money for things like referrals, it does present in everyone a somewhat of a conflict of interest, because if I have two real estate agents, and I know that one is going to be a better fit than the other, but if I refer you to the one that's not a good fit, I make money. That is now a conflict of interest in my head, and now I need to make a character choice whether I give you the best option for you or the best option for me. And so, yeah, I think that's where it goes back to the fiduciary thing. Is like, you always want to give the best option to your client, even though another option can benefit the both of you, just not as much.
Right. And I also think it's fine to ask someone, are you getting a fee for this? And also to tell someone, personally, I don't take a fee for anything. But if I did, I am someone who would probably say, listen, I have these two people. This person is going to give me a fee, but I don't want you picking it for that reason. I want you to pick the one that's best for you. Like I said, I don't put myself in that situation. But if I think transparency is important. And if you ask someone and they seem hesitant to tell you, like, to me, that would be unsettling for sure.
Absolutely. I love it. I love the transparency aspect. Like I think that's the most important thing, especially building trust, is transparency. Hey, look, that's why I love people who will send out their affiliate link and they'll say, hey, look, I will make a commission on this. You do not have to do it, but if you make a purchase, I will get a small amount. I think that's honest, and I think it's commendable. So, Alissa, let's go into the final questions of the podcast. And of course, I ask these same questions to every single guest who comes on. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Question number 1. Everyone has their own definition of what it means to have financial peace. What is your definition?
So my definition is being financially independent. So I'm not relying on other people. And as I shared earlier, even as a kid, I always found a way to make money. If I needed money for something, I never went back to my parents and said, that's not enough, or what are you talking about? I just found a way. And the other thing is really choice, to have choices. So, to find a life that you can live and be financially independent and have choices in your life, to me, I would say that's the definition.
I love it. I think choice is what makes this country so great. Question number 2. If there are listeners out there that want to start building wealth and they have no clue where to get started, what would you tell them?
So I would say, first of all, it's really important to figure out what is important to you. What is going to make you happy? I think that that's really the most important thing. What's going to make you happy? And then in light of that, to really think, and I know this sounds really simple, but it really does work, spend less than you make. For some reason, even though it seems so simple, it's not something that they really follow. So spending less than you make, setting aside the extra money, and investing in a portfolio that's diversified and is focused on the long term. So there are no crystal balls, because if so, this would have a different podcast name, right? Or you'd be doing something else, but there are no crystal balls. And so it's very simple. You have to spend less than you make, and then you have to take that money. And ideally, the way that I feel is easiest for people, and obviously you have to educate yourself or seek advice on this, is to really create a portfolio that aligns with your risk tolerance and that's diversified. So when you're seeing the market go up and down, something, I'm in this for the long run, and I'm not going to lose sleep because I know what the history is. And so while there are definitely other ways to invest besides ETFs and mutual funds, we have so much historical data on it that I feel that it gives people more confidence, but there are other ways to diversify as well. So I don't want to say that's the answer. It might also be investing in yourself. If you have a job, right now, if you have a job, take the time, if you don't have a LinkedIn account or you haven't looked at it in a while, update it. Make sure you're connecting with people. Your value, your ability to be employable or start a business is important. And a lot of it is being visible to people. And so it's one of the things, even though it's not under the financial advising hat necessarily, or not what you think about, investing in yourself isn't just about a portfolio. It's also about having that LinkedIn updated. Are there courses you could take that will make your skills better? Is it letting your employer or your clients know that there are things that you could do that they didn't even realize you could do that could be helpful to them? And now they see you're even more valuable because people are losing jobs right now. It is getting a little harder. I know I'm not going to go into the unemployment report yesterday because the reality is I have a son who is a senior in college, and things are different, and it doesn't mean he won't get a job and he won't get a good job, but he also worked really hard in making sure he was where he needed to be. And so wherever you are in your journey, make sure that you're investing in yourself. It doesn't necessarily take money. It could be going on your LinkedIn, connecting with people, letting them know you're around, updating it so they know your skills, letting your employer know so they're not laying you off because they just found out you could do something they never even asked you to do. And now they don't need to hire someone else to do it. So I think those are some of the things that I would get started. And then it's great to become more financially literate. I think that's a really good starting point. Make sure you're using reliable sources. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And, but you also, if you want to make a change, you have to implement, because I see a lot of people, they read and they, talk about it. I know that it could be challenging to implement. I'm not diminishing that. So set attainable goals and steps. So maybe you have a goal of you want a down payment for a home, and maybe have different goals where, say that you need, I'm going to just say for argument's sake, you need $20,000. Celebrate the milestones. Just don't be so hard on yourself where you're thinking, I need 20,000. I'm not there. I'm not there. Figure out when you want to ideally reach the goal, set aside the money, automate it, and set aside, this is a great thing what James was talking about, when you do want to put the money separately, so you're not tempted to use it for something else. Automate it, put it in a high yield account. So this way it's there, it's making some interest. It's one of the benefits of interest rates going up. And then celebrate the wins along the way, not by spending more money, but just acknowledge it and say, oh my gosh, I'm a quarter of the way there. Or maybe your game plan is celebrate each $1,000 that you have in there, whatever it is, celebrate it, but make them attainable. Don't say, oh, I want $1 million home and you have debt and you're stressed out. Figure out what you can do now. The other thing I like to do when you're talking about a home or any new expense is to almost, pretend you are already there. Figure out what the expenses will be once you get that new home or whatever that new expense is. The new car, maybe you need a parking spot, whatever it is, the repairs. And set aside that money, put it in your expense plan now, and automate it. So whatever you think that amount will be for the HOA, the landscaping, whatever it might be, take that money, set it aside, because the reality is whenever we make these big moves, we're going to need more money than we think we need. So having the extra money set aside will not be a negative at all. See how it feels. If in 6 months you're stressed out because your money is so tight, then maybe this decision isn't the best one for you. It doesn't mean now we're going to spend all that money that we worked hard to set aside, but that's when you reset your goals and you think, okay, maybe that home, maybe that's not the right thing, or maybe you can move into your parents' home temporarily and really save more money and tell them, this is my goal. I need to save more money so I could get this. Are you comfortable with me moving in? I promise this is my goal. I'll show you even that I'm setting aside this money. But I think it's having the plan is great. Increasing your financial literacy, great. How are you going to implement it so you feel good about what you do and you're celebrating along the way, but you also feel what that new life choice will feel for you so you don't get in a situation that's uncomfortable.
Ooh, fire, Alissa. Fire. I love it.
Thanks.
Next question. If there's one thing that you could advise everyone to avoid doing to build wealth, what would it be?
So avoid putting it off.
Okay. Break that down. Break that down.
Okay. I have met with a lot of people that some people are definitely on course, and it's, I meet with them and it's very simple. You could see that they're on course for what they want to achieve. But while I realize a lot of people, it could be stressful. People don't like speaking about money. They don't like being vulnerable and sharing their money. Time is the best thing you have on your side to reach any financial goals that you have. And so the longer people put it off, the harder it might be to be on track. Or maybe, sometimes people, here's a perfect example, since you talked about all the different ways to save for retirement. Sometimes people don't have an employer. So, or they feel, I don't qualify for a Roth contribution. And I've met with people who just didn't save for retirement because they didn't have a retirement plan that they could use. And rather than, and personally, they have, like, some of them have accountants, and the accountants probably should have had the discussion with them, but they didn't. And so they just weren't saving for retirement. And just because you don't have a retirement plan doesn't mean you shouldn't save. And even if you can't, let's say, even if you could do the Roth, that might not be enough for your retirement savings, to save enough for retirement. But you can also use a brokerage account and save for retirement. And so I think it's really important to not put it off, because for those people who are not on track, part of that is, they feel that they have to cut back on things that they got used to. Because when you're not saving for retirement, for instance, a lot of people level up their style of living. And so now they're used to spending more, even though, maybe they make a lot, but they're used to a certain lifestyle. And the mindset that goes with that is really hard to scale back. And it takes time. And you might end up feeling bad where you didn't do something wrong, but the worst case scenario of doing it sooner rather than later is that you see you're on track and everything's great and you're celebrating like, oh, I'm doing everything I need to do. But the other side of it is maybe there's one thing, even if everything is great, maybe there's some tax advantage things that you can do that will put you in an even better situation. So I would say the one piece of advice is don't put it off.
Yeah, I think procrastination is the thief of productivity. Okay. The longer you put something off, the less productive you're going to be doing that thing. But also, excuses are the thief of explanations. Instead of, I forgot who said this, but I think it was Warren Buffett. Instead of saying, can I do something, is how do I do something, right? It's not saying, can I save for retirement? It's how do I save for retirement? Okay, I can't do this, this, and that. What can I do? And once you ask how I do something instead of can I do something, it opens up the broader picture and helps you get things done. I love it. Question number 4, Alissa. If there's someone out there that doesn't believe that they can reach financial peace due to their age, race, religion, sexual orientation, etc., what would you say to change their mind?
I feel like we've really addressed this, but to be more specific to people who might feel, because of who they are or their background, to know that there are people that you would relate to that have overcome any stereotypical barriers or other things that they thought were challenges, and that you can do it. And that I really believe that anyone could do it. But I do feel that I also want them to know that if you're going to work with someone, that you feel comfortable with, because I think that's really important. And when I say work with someone, it could be a professional. But the other thing is to surround yourself with like-minded people. And a lot of people feel uncomfortable discussing money. But I will tell you, when you start having those open discussions, initially people might be a little shocked that you're sharing this information. But if you could have those conversations, and then you'll find people in your very community that you can share your journey with, and you'll end up helping them too, because statistically, most people are not saving enough for retirement. It's a fact. Most people so many people are living paycheck to paycheck. So know that you will not just be helping yourself, you'll be helping other people in your community. So you will have people that you're already surrounded with, that you're comfortable with, that you can go on this journey with. But also, like I said, if you're going to seek professional advice, you deserve to be with someone you're comfortable with. And it might be someone you already know, it might be someone else, and you deserve, whatever your financial or other goals are, you deserve it. And so definitely, like we said before, increasing your financial literacy and all of that is great. Setting attainable goals, you can start it on your own. But if you need any professional advice, you deserve the best. It's your money. So just remember that, if someone makes you feel uncomfortable because of who you are, then you just haven't found the right person yet. But there is someone else out there for you. And at the end of the day, also make sure they're your decisions. You shouldn't have to compromise and feel that someone's telling you what to do. Yes, they could say, listen, if you continue like this, you won't have what you want, or you should get this. But no matter what the person's qualifications are, it's your money and it's your decisions. No one should be telling you what to do. They should only be giving you advice.
I love it, Alissa. My favorite saying that I've kind of started saying recently is not everyone can do it, but everyone can become somebody who can do it. And what I basically mean by that is like, if you're a person who's hopeless for the future, if you're not where you want to be, if you're sad, if you're going through things, yes, it is not possible for you in your current state of mind to accomplish these things. But if you're able to change, if you're able to get more hopeful, if you're able to get more educated on what you want to do, if you're willing to put in the work to get where you want to be, you can turn into somebody who can absolutely do it. And when I tell people that, I kind of sort of get a little glint in their eyes, like, wait a minute, okay, you know what? He might have a point. Maybe I can't do it now, but that doesn't mean I cannot become someone who can do it. So that's what I've started saying recently, and I think it's worked so far. So,
No, I agree, definitely.
Alissa, God, oh God, this was such an amazing interview. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing. I mean, we went through so much stuff, and you're such a well speaker, and you put things very well. So I appreciate you coming on. Where can people find out more about you?
So, first of all, thank you. I could do this with you all the time. This is so much fun. And I love, I love your Instagram and I just wanted to follow up on what you said. I think it's important for those people to also, if you're not following James, because you might be seeing this on a different platform. I met James through Instagram. And I definitely think if you have an Instagram account to follow James, because I feel that you share everything in bite-sized pieces. And for someone who's going on their journey right now, James is there to be your partner, and you can listen to his bite-sized pieces and, get those reinforcements so not only the podcast, but it's almost like, those calendars that have like different things to do each day. You pull the top sheet. James has that and more. And, you could share your comments and your input and your journey, which also you'll connect with other people on their journey. So I think it's important, maybe those people aren't, in your friend group or, your work group of people that you interact with every day, but there are other people that you can meet. And so I think that's important. But as far as finding me, I do have a website, amplifymywealth.com, and I have lots of free information, resources on my resource page. So whether it's the newsletter or downloadables or articles, I encourage people to do that. I have taken a little break from Clubhouse, but I am going to go back on. So my social media, whether it's Clubhouse or Instagram, is at Amplify My Wealth. You could find me there. And once again, James, this was so much fun. And I love all your shares on Instagram. I really applaud you. You're so smart and, amazing with your information. You do give different angles. You're not all about this is what everyone needs to do. You really listen to everyone and you share all your different insights. So thank you for what you're doing for everyone, because that question that you have, you're answering it every day for people. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Alissa. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on, not only sharing where you've come from, but also sharing so many tips that I think everyone's going to get great value of. I hope you have a blessed rest of your day, Alissa.
You too. Thank you so much, James.
Boy, oh boy, we covered so much on this interview. Alissa was such a great guest. I really hope I didn't overwhelm you guys with so much information because I know it's a lot to take in. But, you know, talking about being a fiduciary, talking about fee-only advisors, the pros and the cons of going to a fee-only advisor or even a commission-based advisor, things like that. But also, I think the most important takeaway from this conversation is that you should not be looking for all your answers from one person. And if one person is trying to give you all the answers on everything in your life, they're probably not the right person to take full-fledged advice from. You know, one person should not be giving you tax advice, insurance advice, estate planning advice, cutting your lawn, and all these other things, right? You need to go to those specific people and make sure you're not getting unqualified advice from some people, and realize the people you're talking to, help them stay in their lane. What are you there to talk to them about? If you're at your estate planner, don't be asking for financial advice. It's not their lane. But I really think we knocked that point home. Alissa was such a great guest on the podcast. I really hope you guys enjoy. If you guys want to reach out to Alissa, I'll have all her social medias linked down in the show notes below. If you guys want to reach out to me, I'm also down there. And if you guys want to schedule a one-on-one meeting with me, you can find that on my website, which is down below. I'm going to get up out of here, guys. This was such a great conversation. I'm your host, James Bowman, and always remember, you're only as secure as your ability to perform. So spend your life accumulating assets that can perform for you. Later, guys.